He was near.
It's devastating. It's really a case of where something has happened with our society that ruins everything that we try to do. And I guess tonight what you're seeing is an example of that. I don't know what caused it. I don't know what created it. And certainly I'm hopeful that tomorrow we'll find out what did it. But that doesn't really matter. What happened tonight is really it's a shame. It's a shame with our society because when you try to put something on, when you attract people to a community and then this happens, there's really no explanation.
Early this morning, city crews moved quickly to clean up debris from the night of destruction. No official damage estimate has yet been released. The unofficial estimate is that as many as 30 businesses sustained some sort of damage.
We're going to have to take some reaction back and look after this. We can't let this happen all the time, or it's going to ruin the Penticton Peach Festival and people coming to Penticton. It gives Penticton a bad name the way this has happened.
Music 91 officials strongly deny that the MC Hammer concert had anything to do with the riot.
No, we categorically deny that there's any connection between MC Hammer concert and the riot last night for a number of reasons. One, our age group at MC concert, the average age of the kids was 11 years old, went from about 3 years old to 15 or 16. Conspicuously absent were the 15 to 24-year-old males that really caused the problems last night.
By the time it was all over, 60 people had been treated in hospital for minor injuries. About 90 people spent the night in jail. Premier Rita Johnston has asked for a full report on what took place before and during this morning's riot. Some sort of action plan may result. Kelowna Mayor Jim Stewart is calling on the province to resurrect a task force, one that should include all communities with policing problems during such summer events. There are many unanswered questions. Will the riot mean an end to the Peach Festival, as it meant to the Kelowna Regatta? How will police handle next weekend's crowds, expected to be even larger? Meanwhile, Penticton police report another busy night in the city this evening. They're watching the situation very closely to ensure things don't get out of hand. CHBC News will be following this story very closely over the next few days. Our next report tomorrow on CHBC News at 5. I'm Rick Weber. Stay with us now for This Week in the Okanagan. Good night.
In the Okanagan, boozed up crowds of teenagers going on a rampage in local towns, smashing windows and playing chicken with police. It got so bad a few years ago that Kelowna was forced to cancel its annual regatta. Now officials in Penticton are taking a second look at their annual Peach Fest and wondering if they have to do the same. Last night, more than 2,000 teenagers locked horns with police in Penticton as a two-day simmer came to a boil. Windows were smashed, stores were looted, and police were forced to use tear gas to break it up. Because the riot came 90 minutes after a Music 91 concert by MC Hammer, a lot of people assumed the concert crowd was responsible for the rampage. That was not the case. Penticton Mayor Jake Kimberley says RCMP seemed to think the riot was organized well in advance by people from out of town, most of them between the ages of 14 and 20. Kimberley says he's shocked that people that young were on the streets that late at night. About 9,000 fans filled a municipal park in Penticton last night in one of the largest concerts in the province-supported Music 91 series. American rapper MC Hammer is featured on stage. The concert ended around 10:30 in Kings Park. Then, about an hour and a half later, only a few concert goers joined crowds of teens who've been hanging around the beach and downtown areas where apparently the booze was flowing freely since Friday night.
What were the people doing? They were yelling, they were all coming this way, they were yelling, tear gas, tear gas, tear gas, and you can see the tear gas coming. So we all run into audio vision.
Why did they start shooting tear gas?
Because
people bad.
Well, just people will walk by and just kick the windows in.
Police had to read the riot act to about 1,200 teens 2 nights ago, but last night the crowd swelled to over 2,000. Police donned riot gear after reports of rocks being pelted at traffic cops, and this time the riot act is read from a helicopter. Tear gas is used to break up the rampaging crowd, and after the smoke clears, a local landmark is in ruins. 60 people go to hospital and 90 go to jail. Some stores, like this liquor store, were looted. But the biggest casualty seemed to be storefront windows, although no one is blaming any of the damage on the MC Hammer fans.
I walked home with the crowd, and it was parents with kids on their shoulders and little, almost toddlers. I mean, the average age was about 12 years old. The average age down here were sort of drinking age, and it wasn't the same crowd at all.
Whatever the cause, many merchants are wondering if the Peach Festival can survive such violence.
Peach Fest is a really good time for us as far as making any money goes. Lots of people, and we do good in sales. Every business in town does good. But now that it's going to be maybe canceled, it takes away one of the best weeks of the year for us.
Some teens on Penticton streets, though, seem to think there will be more trouble.
Tonight will be really slow, but next weekend's the cops gotta watch out for next weekend.
What do you think's going to happen next weekend?
Cops are gonna get run over. Next weekend is the main weekend. That's when everybody comes here.
And they have a choice. They can come down and break windows and do stuff, or they can go home and behave themselves. If I'd have been a policeman, I think I'd have been shooting at the buggers.
To keep Peach Festival bringing crowds and money to Penticton, the authorities must now find some way to curb the violence. Premier Rita Johnston wants to get to the bottom of the Penticton riot and says she's greatly disturbed by reports of the destruction. Johnston says she'll be looking for a full report from Solicitor General Ivan Messmer, who is also the area's MLA. Messmer toured the area to assess the damage and agreed something has to be done to prevent further rampages in the Okanagan. Kelowna Mayor Jim Stewart is no stranger to this kind of problem. Today he called on the provincial government to resurrect a riot task force. He says its recommendations against riding in the back of pickups, a ban on the sale of bottled beer, and a crackdown on liquor in the area should be acted upon now. The owners of the sunken...
Very own news channel. This is CHBC News.
Good evening. A riot in Penticton. Who's to blame and how to prevent it from happening again this weekend? We will show you exclusive pictures of a night of rampage and destruction. We'll talk to witnesses about what happened and tell you what the mayor has planned to prevent a recurrence. Gord Gillies, of course, in with tonight's weather report.
Most of the areas that we deal with saying they had clouds to start the day, but this afternoon things have improved. We see sunshine right through the Okanagan and a reasonably good forecast coming up ahead.
Our sports report, of course, tonight from Pat Kennedy.
Look at what El Presidente did yesterday. He was perfect. We'll take you back to that. Also show you what happened on the links today because the Seniors U.S. Open Tour, Chi-Chi against the Bear. 18 holes played today.
With exclusive and complete coverage of the Penticton Riot of 1991, this is CHBC News at 5.
CHBC News at 5. With Gordon Vizzuti, Pat Kennedy with sports, and Mike Roberts with the Okanagan's most extensive weather report.
No one expected the 1991 Penticton Peach Festival to come to such a screeching halt. Shortly after midnight Sunday morning, after a long hot day, a concert by rap star MC Hammer, and certainly too much liquor, thousands of young people rioted in downtown Penticton. How it started, no one seems to really know, but the signs were there. A small crowd, one that grew larger, eventually reaching 2,000. Something snapped. Windows were smashed, businesses looted, and it wasn't long before the tear gas was flying. We picked things up with the MC Hammer concert on Saturday night.
About 10,000 people attended the outdoor concert. After the concert was over, attention shifted to the streets of downtown Penticton.
A little bit, eh?
Over a 2-hour period, the crowds grew, and so did the tension.
Let's see some skin!
Windows of downtown businesses were smashed. Some looting took place.
Hey, man, how's it going? Bad news, eh? Hey, who are you? Well, we're here just after.
It's not clear exactly how the riot started. A witness says the riot squad was called in after about 50 youths surrounded 2 RCMP officers and began kicking and beating them. Whatever the cause, at 12:41 Sunday morning, Penticton Mayor Jake Kimberley officially read the riot act, and the tear gas flew. The familiar Peach concession stand was tipped over, looted, and completely demolished by a mob of youths. Police say most of the crowd was made up of people between 14 and 20 years of age. They also say the riot seemed to be organized in advance, mostly by people from out of town.
handcuffs. Good job.
And look, that's the tear gas that I picked up and threw back, man.
Something has happened with our society that ruins everything that we try to do. And I guess tonight what you're seeing is an example of that. I don't know what caused it. I don't know what created it. And certainly I'm hopeful that tomorrow we'll find out what did it. But that doesn't really matter. What happened tonight is really it's a shame. It's a shame with our society because when you try to put something on, when you attract people to a community and then this happens, there's really no explanation.
Can you find kids? I mean, these are just kids. I mean, is there anything that can be done in that regard?
Well, very little when you get to a situation like you have tonight, because you could never have enough police in order to do the job that would stop this type of situation. So it's one that we as a society have to deal with.
At first light Sunday morning, city crews moved quickly to clean up debris from the night of destruction.
Isn't it supposed to be on its wheels and not on its side?
Music 91 officials strongly denied that the MC Hammer concert had anything to do with the riot.
We categorically deny that there's any connection between MC Hammer concert and the riot last night for a number of reasons. One, our age group at MC concert, the average age of the kids was 11 years old, went from about 3 years old to 15 or 16. Conspicuously absent were the 15 to 24-year-old males that really caused the problems last night.
Rick Weber, CHBC News, Penticton.
Well, every crime, of course, has its victim. In the case of the Penticton Riot, there are several victims. They are the merchants in the downtown core, the people whose shops were vandalized and, in many instances, looted. The total cost of the destruction and the thievery is not known, but it is certainly in the tens of thousands of dollars. And the situation would have been much worse if shopkeepers and their friends didn't move in to protect their stores from the rioters. Blaine Gaffney has the story.
The cleanup continues following Sunday morning's riot. On the storefronts in downtown Penticton, there almost seems to be as much plywood as glass. Damage is extensive and costly.
The fact that the Riot Act was read has some effects on that.
Do you know what?
No, I've been informed by our insurance company that we're probably looking at about 50% of what we would normally get.
The city's 6 glass shops are swamped with work orders.
So any idea on how much all this glass costs?
No, a lot. Just lots.
2 concession stands along Okanagan Beach, including the familiar Peach, were especially hard hit during the riot.
They took a 4x4, they went through the steel door. They stole 240 dozen novelties. They couldn't even consume that many.
So any idea on how much was lost or the value of the damage and the loss and all that?
Easily over $100,000 between the Peach and the one at Lakeshore and Power.
The Tourist Information Center is a total mess. The destruction was rampant and senseless.
Mainly just the brochures in this room. The other rooms had the computers and the postage machine and the photocopier.
Did they wreck that?
Oh yeah, everything's demolished.
Electronic shops were a favorite target of the looters. Losses will amount to thousands of dollars, but it could have been much worse.
Right after the original looting started, local Penticton people, customers of ours actually came down as sort of protecting the building and stopping the people from looting the rest of the store until the police and we got here, which I thought was great.
There's even reports of one shopkeeper waving a loaded shotgun to ward off the looters.
As the cleanup continues in downtown Penticton and merchants tally up the losses due to looting and the vandalism, the question many are asking is, what about next weekend?
Next weekend, well, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to get 6 big Doberman pinchers, and they're going to be in the front of the store. I don't know. Something, yeah.
The idea is to move a lot of merchandise out of the fronts of the stores and not entice people to, or encourage them to take merchandise.
But for now, merchants can only make the best of a bad situation. Some collect souvenirs from the night of the rioting. And while they try to restore the Tourist Information Center to working shape, the day's business carries on from a desk out on the sidewalk. In Penticton, Blaine Gaffney, CHBC News.
At the Penticton Hospital, 2 extra physicians had to be called in to deal with the flood of injuries stemming from the rioting. 40 people were treated, including 1 police officer. Some had broken bones, but most had glass cuts. There were also injuries resulting from people falling off the back of vehicles. The Penticton Hospital plans to bring in extra emergency room staff for next weekend, just in case. And Premier Rita Johnson is threatening to crack down on the rioters. She says she will push for tough bail conditions and early trial dates for those who took part in the rioting. Johnson expects Solicitor General Ivan Mesmer will have some recommendations for the next cabinet meeting. Well, still ahead tonight on CHBC News at 5, we continue our examination of the weekend riot in Penticton. You will hear from the police how they acted and what they will or will not do to prevent another riot this coming weekend. We will talk to Penticton Mayor Jake Kimberly about, among other things, the future of the Peach Festival and the voice of experience, Kelowna Mayor Jim Stewart, who's been through all of this before. CHBC News continues in just a moment.
Molson Canadian, what beer's all about.
This week, it's Safeway's Bigger Meat Sale, and that means you can really round up some great buys. No tricks, gimmicks, or loopholes. Just real savings on a wider choice of the best cuts of meat and poultry from the biggest supermarket chain in the West. Safeway's Bigger Meat Sale is a better way to save. Hey, now don't let this one get away on you.
The auditions, the rehearsals, the sexy showgirls. This is fun Las Vegas style. And Entertainment Tonight has your insider's look into the making of Vegas's newest extravaganza.
We went for the best that was available for the kind of show we were doing.
Plus, Michael J. Fox tells why a new role as a doctor has the right prescription for the box office bucks.
Those old-fashioned comedies are good. I like them.
It all happens on the next Entertainment Tonight.
Tonight at 7 on the Okanagan's very own CHBC.
Follow the sun at the Okanagan and make a splash at 2 of the most exciting attractions in the Okanagan. Wild and Wet at Old McDonald's Farm in West Bank. Wild and Wet at Children's Pool, Kamikaze Slide, Ravine River Rides, Old McDonald's Farm, where kids are made to feel special and adults feel like kids. There's something for the whole family. Come and stay in the sunny Okanagan and take in Wild and Wet and Old McDonald's Farm in West Bank. Highway 97, 5 minutes south of Kelowna.
Supernatural BC.
Authorities in Penticton say the weekend riot simply caught everyone off guard. Although the police were prepared for a large number of young partiers, they say it was the militant, confrontational attitude that they were not prepared for. And those arrested blamed the police for inciting trouble. Mohini Singh now with the story.
No one knows exactly what started the riot. The RCMP say by 10 o'clock Saturday night it was evident there was going to be trouble. Up till then there were 55 officers on the streets. But when large numbers of people started gathering along the lake shore, the riot police were called in from Kelowna and Vernon. Shortly after midnight, the RCMP were given the power to arrest anyone found in the riot zone. 84 people were taken to the lockup that night. Most of them were from the Vernon and Kelowna areas. Police say only 35 of them were directly involved in the violence. Those arrested blame the police for overreacting.
They just grabbed everybody off the street. Like, if you get grabbed by the neck like that and thrown in the back of the car and hit a couple times, like, it's kind of a shock when you're just walking down the street going to your vehicle.
Who hit you?
A police officer.
See my eye right here? I got totally nailed with a billy club. Wham, right in the head. I was just standing there. They were
doing that left and right, 3-on-1. They were doing that all last night.
The RCMP vehemently deny these charges.
There appeared to be agitators in the crowd that would start fights, and they would start something to try to draw the police into it. And we took the stand that we would stay back as much as we could, given that it appeared that there was efforts seemed to be made to perhaps bait us.
City officials are worried about next weekend and are appealing to the provincial government for financial assistance to have more police officers.
People have got to fully understand that when you're faced with a horde such as that you're facing a tremendous amount of opposition, and you have to regroup and reestablish, as was done, in order to take the offensive. I myself was personally physically attacked in the car when I read the riot act in Main Street, and that's a scary situation.
RCMP say they were prepared for this weekend's large crowds, but not for the violent attitude which was evident that night.
There was a mixture of people in there that were confrontational, and we were satisfied that they were endeavoring to provoke us. So I guess I would say that we certainly did not expect the confrontational attitude that existed on Saturday night based on previous experience on that weekend here. But we had considerably more officers on that night to deal with the anticipated crowds. And but no, we did not anticipate a riot.
The RCMP is keeping a tight lip about its strategy during the BC Day long weekend. They will have roadblocks in the city. Many of the partiers say there will be thousands more young people in Penticton next weekend, leaving officials and the RCMP with the mammoth task of keeping the mobs under control. In Penticton, Mohini Singh, CHBC News.
Mayor Jake Kimberly of Penticton read the riot act, as you saw in those pictures, shortly after 12:30 Sunday morning. We're speaking to Mr. Kimberly at this moment. Mr. Kimberly, what happened? How did the crowds get so big in Penticton in the first place?
Well, actually, the police recorded that the crowd started to build between 9 and 9:30 p.m. on the Saturday night. And then the indicators were around 10:30, the crowds were building considerably fast. At that time, they estimated them to be about 700 people strong, and between 10:30 and 11:30, they have estimated around 1,000 people on the lakeshore.
Didn't anyone see this coming earlier in the day, Mr. Mayor? Surely there must have been an indication that there were a lot of people in Penticton in the afternoon.
Well, there was every indication there was a lot of people there for the MC Hammer concert, but certainly there was no indication that anybody was there to cause problems.
Give us an idea of who the people are that were involved. Now, you said yesterday that you believe that the majority of the people involved in inciting this riot were from out of town, and in fact, you went a little farther. You said they were there with one specific purpose, and that was to riot and cause trouble in Penticton. Could you elaborate on that?
That was very clear from the evidence it was giving at the debriefing on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. at the RCMP headquarters, that all those that were arrested, main group of them from out of town. Also, there was comment made to the RCMP officers on duty and out on the front lines from the individuals involved that they were from out of town. Also, the projectiles used, of course, were beer bottles. Majority of the beer bottles were what used. And, of course, the community and the city has banned the sale of beer bottles since July the 16th as a result of last year's long weekend scenario. So it was obvious that those that came with their own booze, and every indication was, as I say, that we had comments given to us and reports given to us that they were full intent to come to Penticton and cause problems.
Mr. Mayor, do you have enough police officers in Penticton to handle this?
Well, we did on Saturday. We had additional forces brought in for the MC Hammer concert, additional 20 troops. As soon as the concert was over, they were dispatched to the lakeshore and to the downtown core. We then at that time called Kelowna's response team, the tactical troop, and also Vernon. But in the interim, we called in troops from Summerland, Oliver, Osoyoos, and I believe some from Karamias.
Mr. Mayor, what's on the minds of many people at this point in time is what will happen this weekend, this coming weekend, the August holiday, which has typically caused a lot of problems with policing in Penticton. What are you going to do?
Well, we're prepared, of course, from the last year's events and the year before, going back to '89. We fully aware of what was required, and of course we're going to bring in a considerable amount of additional police force, and the police will given the authority to take people out of the back of vehicles, as you know, through the bylaw that we passed and adopted in council, charging the driver of a vehicle having passengers in the cargo space $100 on the spot, and of course the additional police force will have the understanding of last year's events and knowing exactly where to control. And of course we have the Party Responsible program that we've put together in the community, which is going to assist the police force in doing their job.
Mr. Mayor, one final question to you. Is the Peach Festival going to go the way of the regatta? Of course, cancellation in Kelowna of the annual summer event because of this exactly this kind of thing? Have you discussed that with your council members?
I advised council that I'd be calling a special meeting with council to discuss it with the Peach Festival Society in respect to next year's event. This year's event was one of the most successful we've had, and as a result, I feel personally that we should not cancel it to respond to a bunch of hoodlums that believe that they can control society in the way the rest of us would like to live, and enjoy the festival as it was.
Mr. Mayor, we know you're busy. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Well, there is an Okanagan mayor who has been through all of this before. Kelowna Mayor Jim Stewart. In 1987, what's become known as the Kelowna Regatta Riot put an end to that annual summer festival. A task force was formed after the Kelowna riot, and it came up with recommendations. Recommendations that Mayor Stewart says have been mostly ignored by the provincial government. Well, today, Stewart hopes that the Penticton Riot will resurrect that task force, and that this time, perhaps the provincial government will be listening. Gord Gillies now with more on that.
The 1987 Kelowna Regatta had been widely predicted. Organizers and municipal politicians took what they thought were the appropriate steps to ensure that there wouldn't be a repeat of the 1986 disturbances. But an increased police presence and efforts to make Regatta more of a family festival didn't help.
I quite honestly don't know if there is a magic formula. You do a program of the best surveillance you can, but if someone really comes here to promote one, I'm sure he could find the right grounds and the right conditions to get something going.
A 1987 task force asked Victoria to make legislative changes that might help tourist communities avoid crowd control problems, including changes to the Motor Vehicle Act that would make it illegal to ride in the back of a pickup truck, tougher penalties for public drinking and drunkenness, allowing communities to prohibit liquor outlets from selling beer in glass containers. Mayor Stewart witnessed the 1987 Regatta riot firsthand. What he saw convinced him that the crowds of onlookers are almost as great a problem as the hardcore troublemakers.
You read the Riot Act, and the Riot Act clearly states that you're supposed to go home, get off the street, and all too many people want to stand and watch.
Stewart says people get injured because they aren't smart enough to get out of the way. In Kelowna, Gord Gillies, CHBC News.
Incidentally, Penticton was poised to act on one of the task force recommendations. A bylaw was waiting for approval in Victoria, one that would make it illegal to ride in the back of pickup trucks or open automobile trunks. However, it was to be in place before the BC Day long weekend. Police in Penticton could not enforce it this past weekend. However, it will be enforceable by the RCMP by this Friday. Our coverage of the riot continues in just a moment on CHBC News at 5. Right now, Gord Gillies with the first part of our weather report tonight.
And I think I have some reasonably good news in the forecast. We thought at first that we might see some clouds and showers rolling in by the middle portion of the week, but when we get to our Okanagan forecast, I'll show you how that will...
The feelings of a young Penticton resident who watched helplessly as his town was being ripped apart yesterday morning. We'll also explore mob mentality and what goes through the mind of a rioter. Stay with us. One of the many people involved in the activities, that is not to say the rioting on Saturday evening, Sunday morning, was Lyle Brandt of Penticton, a Penticton resident. Now, Mr. Brandt, you were actually on the street level. Describe to us how the evening progressed and how what seemed to be kind of a party atmosphere turned ugly in a very short time.
Well, Gordon, we were downtown and everything seemed really busy. Actually, it seemed a lot busier than last year, and people seemed to be crowding on both sides of the street. And there was a lot of out-of-towners from what I could tell, but everything seemed to be just a little busy and excited and people having a good time. And we decided we'd walk down to the beach, and as we were getting close, we heard some screaming and yelling, and we thought that maybe the group from MC Hammer was down there and talking to the people. But as we got close, the people started running away, and as we got down to the lake, the cops or the police were taking their vehicles and leaving the vicinity because they were throwing rocks and bottles and other miscellaneous items at their cars, and they had to take off. And the people ran up towards Front Street and then along Front Street and back up Main Street. And they started smashing windows. It didn't seem like they were looting any, but they were smashing windows all along Main Street, especially on the 200 block, and they seemed to be going along, and after about 10-15 minutes things cooled down a bit, and just got back to a sort of a party atmosphere and cooled down a bit. And then all of a sudden there was a riot squad coming down the street throwing tear gas, and everybody started running away. So everybody retreated down to the lake and stayed there, but as people kind of went off to the sides and stuff, I guess, and went up Martin Street and stuff and started vandalizing things on Martin. And when they got everybody collected down on the lakeshore there, they started vandalizing the Peach and the Chamber of Commerce.
Now, Lyle, you are a Penticton resident, and the mayor has told us, the police as well, that most of the people involved as troublemakers in this particular incident were from out of town and were very young, between 14 and 20 years of age. Does that jive with what you saw down on the street that night?
Yeah, I would say that was pretty close. I wouldn't say there was anybody over the age of 25 down there. Everybody was really young and had absolutely no respect for anything. I guess they figured because it was a riot situation they were invisible.
Did you notice that they were out-of-towners? You're from Penticton. You know a lot of people down there. It's not a huge city. Were they from out of town?
Well, I'd say most of them were. I guess I might have recognized a few people. I don't know whether they were causing problems or whether they were just watching the situation, but I'd say a good portion of them were from out of town.
How does this make you feel as a Penticton resident, as a young person living in Penticton? Do you feel you've been labeled and branded along with the rest of these troublemakers? This is your town as well.
Well, sure. I mean, especially for the fact that, you know, everybody starts thinking, yeah, the young people just go out and party and have a good time and start destroying things. And I particularly took offense to the fact that they started destroying things like the Peach there. That's been around for many years, and it was sort of a landmark. It was even in a movie. So I find it offensive that people would come into the town and destroy it.
What's your feeling, Lyle, as to what might happen this weekend, which, of course, is the traditional trouble weekend for the Penticton police?
Well, especially with all this news coverage, it's not going to attract the people that want to come to a peaceful, quiet city. It's going to start attracting the people that like to party and like to get away with things, and that's the kind of clientele that the Penticton is going to attract. So I think, especially with a larger group of people that are going to arrive this weekend, that it's going to be a little bit rougher than it was this weekend.
Lyle, one final question. From a Penticton resident's point of view, what do you feel has to be done to protect this kind of thing from happening year after year? Not so much a riot, but there's trouble every year in Penticton.
Well, I don't know. Education didn't seem to work by trying to, you know, convince people that, you know, party sensibly, and I don't know whether rough handling and policing is an example either, because it seemed as soon as the riot, things would cool down when no one was really enforcing things real tough. But as soon as the riot crew came out, then everything broke loose. Now, I don't know what was happening in other parts of town, but it seemed to me that as soon as the crackdown came is when all the violence came.
Lyle Brandt, do you think the Peach Festival should be canceled?
Well, no, of course not. The Peach Fest brings a lot of stuff to Penticton, a lot of tourists, a lot of money. I don't think either Peach Fest or August Long Weekend should be canceled, the amount of money that it brings in. But I think, and I don't have any answers, but I think something should be figured out to try and curb this violence.
Lyle Brandt of Penticton, we've taken you away from your meal break, and thank you very much for speaking to us. We appreciate it. A psychology professor at Okanagan College says that the Penticton Riot is a classic example of mob mentality. Dr. Jan Seo says the violence can be blamed on several factors, including alcohol and drug use and the hot weather. However, he does not discount reports that some people came to Penticton simply hoping that a riot would break out. Seo says that eventually became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Barry McDivitt reports.
Scenes from a riot, and they bear an eerie similarity to civic disturbances that have taken place in communities ranging from Florida to Kelowna.
The sound, the destruction, being able to exert some power over your environment, to some extent, is an elixir.
When he looked at video taken during the riot, Seo noticed that most of the violence was performed by young men. Women stayed in the background, sometimes acting as cheerleaders. Some of these people will feel ashamed of what they have done. Others will try to shift the blame onto others.
And there will be people afterwards who will say, well, we were just having a good time. We were just minding our own business. If the police hadn't done this, or if the mayor hadn't read the Riot Act, nothing would have happened. Everybody would have went home.
I think the cops sort of started it in a way.
How's that?
They rushed the crowd with about 5 cop cars.
Where was that?
Down on the beachfront.
And that kind of got everyone fired up.
Yeah, it sort of pissed everybody off, I guess.
Well, they're going around being all assholes to everyone, and then everyone just got pissed off and just rioted the whole day.
Yeah, they weren't even carrying batons, they were carrying big clubs, like bats.
Psychologists say rioters can lose their individuality. This sense of anonymity may be one reason why amateur photographers could act with impunity.
And sometimes you wonder about these people who even seem to play up to the camera, despite the fact that if you told them that you were going to bring that tape and present it to the police, they would be really, really upset about it. And that's again part of this idea of playing to an audience. The camera is an audience, probably an even more powerful audience than the people standing around sometimes.
Barry McDivitt, CHBC News.
Zio is afraid that the Okanagan could get a reputation as the place to come to riot. The answer? He believes disturbances can be kept to a minimum if community leaders successfully create a family atmosphere during summer festivals. We'll continue this evening with local weather and much more coming up right after this break.
Married with children, Charles and Diana celebrate a chilly 10th wedding anniversary. And the arms race. Canada leads the world in H2O technology.
The News Hour with Tony Parsons.
Good evening. The streets of Penticton will be filled with police on the BC Day weekend as part of a plan to avert the sort of rioting that tore up the downtown area during the Peach Festival late Saturday and early Sunday. Penticton Mayor Jake Kimberley said today that other measures will also be taken, but he declined to go into specifics. On Saturday night, about 2,000 teenagers turned the city into a war zone. Kimberley read the Riot Act to the crowd, and police waded in to make 90 arrests. Another 60 people were injured, and several stores were looted. We have more from Margot Harper.
An amateur cameraman caught these scenes on tape Saturday night as a crowd of several thousand party animals prowled the streets of downtown Penticton. The damage and mayhem they caused is obvious, and debate in the city has now turned to the question of whether or not they were locals and whether it was just a crowd out of control or a premeditated riot. Things began to get ugly after the crowd stoned a policeman and police retaliated with tear gas. "50 officers in riot gear moved in and arrested more than 70 people. Today, troublemakers from outside are being blamed.
Those people that were arrested and put into the cells over the weekend, and the names and addresses, of course, of those that were collected were majority, I would say, 90% of them were from outside the community.
Where were they from?
North of the city of Penticton and outside of the valley.
Wherever they were from, the revelers ended their rampage at the Penticton Lakeshore on Saturday night. A police helicopter circled as they took out a few streetlights and then trashed concession stands along the beach. To prevent a repeat performance, Penticton will be circled by roadblocks on the upcoming long weekend.
We don't have the right to bar people from the city, but certainly those that were arrested will be known to the police on the roadblocks, and certainly they'll be watching out for those individuals returning. I would reiterate the comments that our inspector said, that we will be fair, but we will be firm.
On a Vancouver talk show, the riot gave the Premier a perfect chance to play her law and order theme.
I would hope that somehow the courts would reflect the tough law and order stance taken by the government and expected by the people of this province. We can't be soft on those kinds of issues. I think we have to be tough.
And as Penticton digs out of the rubble left from Saturday's rampage, civic officials are praying they can prevent more of this on the upcoming weekend.
handcuffs. Give her some handcuffs. I'd be the cop.
Meantime, Okanagan Fruit
5. With Gordon Vizzuti, Pat Kennedy with sports, and Mike Roberts with the Okanagan's most extensive weather report.
It's been 2 days since the Penticton Peach Festival riot. The dust is starting to settle, the analysis has begun, and the preparations are being made to beef up police presence in Penticton in advance of this weekend's BC Day festivities. It's hard to believe anyone would want a recurrence of what happened early Sunday morning, and police are starting to get their no-nonsense message out to the public. They started laying charges against a few alleged rioters today. One Penticton man has been charged so far, at least 5 others expected to be charged by tomorrow. Mohini Singh reports.
Sunday morning's riot led to the arrest of 84 people. Only 35 of them were believed to be directly connected with the violence and vandalism that occurred.
Hi, can I talk to you a second?
The next day, those detained were released. Today, police have laid charges against a Penticton man. 21-year-old Joel Post was arrested last night for participating in a riot and 2 counts of mischief. Police say once the Riot Act is read, anyone seen in the riot area can face serious penalties.
Anyone that does not disperse within 30 minutes of the reading of the Riot Act can be sentenced to life imprisonment. That's one thing a lot of people don't understand. In fact, there's a lot of parents should understand that their kids are out there and getting involved. They may not hear the Riot Act being read, but once it's read, they've got 30 minutes to disperse or they're liable to be sentenced to life imprisonment.
5 other charges are being laid. 3 of the 5 are from the Penticton area. Most of those detained by police on Sunday were under the age of 25. Police are sending a warning to parents about the upcoming BC Day long weekend.
At this time, it looks like we're going to have a lot of charges laid. That's one thing I should mention, you know, that if any of the parents are letting their kids go to Penticton for the weekend and there is a riot situation, their children could be charged. And I really suggest that parents think about keeping their kids home this weekend.
Joel Post remains in police custody while the search for others believed involved with the riot continues. In Penticton, Mohini Singh, CHBC News.
Penticton RCMP continue to sort through evidence trying to identify others involved in the riot. They'd like to hear from anyone with any information, and in the search for some of that information, RCMP today seized photographs from the offices of the Penticton Herald newspaper. Well, it didn't do much to stop last weekend's Penticton riot, but city officials are confident that a new bylaw will dampen any overzealous partying this coming long weekend. Penticton is the only city in British Columbia with a bylaw making it illegal to carry people in a vehicle's cargo area. Last weekend, police were not enforcing the bylaw because doing so would have sent the offenders into, the offenders into an already overcrowded court system. But now measures have been taken so that police have the power to issue a $100 ticket on the spot. Penticton's mayor says the bylaw will be enforced this weekend.
The video coverage of the events of those weekends has shown the rowdyism that occurs in the back of vehicles when they're transporting 20, 30 people in the back of a pickup. That incites more reaction from the curbside crowds and creates more of a problem. So we feel that eliminating them is not only going to help us to control the crowd, but it also eliminate a lot of danger and injury that was a result of people falling out of the vehicles.
Meanwhile, Mayor Kimberly won't specify the anti-riot security measures which will be in place this weekend, saying he doesn't want the enemy to know the game plan. We do know a little bit about what is in store. The provincial government has announced the placement of special police units in Penticton this coming weekend. It's still unknown how many police officers there will be in the city. Solicitor General Ivan Mesmer says there will also be highway checkpoints to ensure no one is riding in vehicle cargo compartments. The special units will also be working closely with the Crown prosecutor. Charges will be laid against anyone caught inciting a riot. The Penticton Riot seems to be adding fuel to Rita Johnston's pre-election campaign. The Premier was giving what is being called a law and order speech in Vancouver this morning. And she says BC citizens need to know that they will be protected.
It's not a pretty picture, and British Columbia's reputation certainly wasn't enhanced when the hooligans went on a rampage this last weekend in Penticton. British Columbians are getting fed up with the increase in the destruction of property by a bunch of thugs who think they can victimize the innocent, all in the name of somehow having a good time.
Some motels in Penticton will be refusing to rent rooms to groups of single people this coming weekend. They say they don't want any trouble from rowdy partiers. And the Chamber of Commerce in Penticton is now worried about the effect that the riot will have on the tourism industry. Once again this evening, here's Mohini Singh.
Officials in Penticton are trying hard to promote the city as a peaceful tourist destination for families. Last weekend's riot is resulting in some families cancelling their bookings for this BC Day long weekend. Motel owners are worried about the situation and are refusing to rent rooms to groups of single people. Now, would you rent a room to, say, 5 guys if they showed up?
No, there's no way. No, we've tried to screen all our reservations. Our motels, basically families and older people, so we're not taking any younger crowd in here at all.
Well, we have the right to refuse service to anybody we want, but, you know, I'm a fair guy. If people are good here, well, then they can stay here. As soon as they, you know, show that they're not responsible, well, I don't want them here no more.
Most of the motels along Lake Shore escaped the damage and vandalism the rowdy partiers committed just a block away. Innkeepers say they are beefing up their own security next weekend, refusing to take in single males, even if they're accused of discriminatory practices.
I don't really care. I just don't want them in here because it's a family-oriented business and motel, and I just don't want them in here.
Meanwhile, the Chamber is worried about the long-term impact on the tourist industry.
Until after the weekend, we're not sure just exactly how it's coming or the effect it's going to have. Obviously, we're not pleased with what's happening. Council programs in place. So all we can hope is that people will come to their senses and treat our city like we hope that they would treat theirs.
Regardless, the city is on tender hooks, wondering what is in store for them this weekend and whether the city known for its beaches and beaches will be better known as Fort Lauderdale North. In Penticton, Mohini Singh, CHBC News.
Following the 1987 Kelowna Regatta riot in Kelowna, the media, particularly the television media, was criticized for contributing to the problem simply by being there. Well, after last night's coverage of the Penticton riot on CHBC, several callers complained that our reports were only contributing to perhaps another round of violence. Kelowna psychologist Dr. Jan Seo appeared on CHBC's midday program this afternoon, and he was asked by Gord Gillies if there might be any substance to the complaints.
We had a dozen calls last night on our coverage saying, even in the front page of the paper yesterday, the Daily Courier, saying, had we not run a story in May talking about some of the safety precautions the council was taking, this all leads to it. I mean,
that's a relatively naive view to think that that the media is ultimately responsible for it. The media, as you undoubtedly realize, has a complex set of problems here. They have to cover it, but on the same time, they don't want to inflame.
Yeah.
The coverage is newsworthy. People want to know about it, and if you hadn't covered it, you would have been castigated by another group of people, no doubt.
Well, the 1991 Penticton Peach Festival riot is long over, but its effects are and will be felt for some time. Police and civic officials are making plans to try to ensure it doesn't happen again this weekend. Merchants still adding up the losses and damages, filling out insurance claims. And then there are those who, although not directly affected by the rioting, were still touched by a night of mayhem. They are, of course, the citizens of Penticton, many of whom feel the attack on their town was an attack on them. Blaine Gaffney reports.
When hundreds of rioting revelers went on a rampage in Penticton, smashing glass, looting shops, and basically destroying anything possible, they did more than physical damage. They also trampled on the psyche of thousands of Penticton residents.
You know, I was born in this town, raised here, went to school here, and for as far back as I can recall, standing right here in this spot in Okanagan Lake was the Peach, that concession stand shaped like the fruit. They've replaced it now with a red box, but it's just not the same. I had an affinity for the Peach. When the rioters destroyed it that night, I was mad. It was almost like a personal attack. Indeed, thousands of Penticton residents felt personally violated by the destruction that night.
Dave and Jean Killick were raised in Penticton. They're raising their kids here. They didn't lose anything in the riot. Their windows weren't smashed, but still...
Well, I was a little upset over the whole thing. It'd be kind of like having a house party, I guess, and having a bunch of people come over and then trash your house. So I think a lot of people kind of feel, you know, violated a little bit, you know, that their town that they take great pride in, that these kids would come from out of town and have no regard for our town and the way we feel about it.
The sentiment is widespread.
This is my hometown. I like it. I'm proud of it, and I'm very disappointed.
Adding to the indignation is the belief that most of the rioters were from out of town, in Penticton specifically to create trouble.
It's very upsetting. I mean, people from Penticton don't go up the valley and trash the place, you know, trash other towns. It's just, I don't see the fun in it. I don't see the point in it.
They're still fixing the broken windows. The looted merchandise can be replaced. And now Peach City citizens are rallying to save their Peach, the concession stand made famous in a well-known movie. Fundraising efforts are underway to rebuild the landmark.
And I think that the Peach was the focal point, like that's our Peach, and this is our city that's being destroyed. And just a feeling as we sat there that we wanted to get together and do something positive, something that said, hey, you can't do that in our place.
She says the donations so far have been fantastic, so it's almost a certainty. This will go, and the Peach will return. In Penticton, Blaine Gaffney, CHBC News.
People collecting money to replace the Peach report that almost $1,000 has been raised. That's just in one day. And Penticton's mayor says he's received several calls, some from out of province, asking that the Peach be rebuilt. A seemingly small but important and symbolic gesture at this point. An Okanagan resident has replaced Rod King on the agricultural